All right. Welcome everyone to the May 14th meeting of the Rotary Club of Beaver Creek. I'm your Zoom host and president, Mike Canada. I'm glad all of you could be here today. I see some faces I haven't seen in a while. Special welcome to Megan for joining us as well. I'd like to thank Mike Zwick for our great speakers and programs, Jim Gundel and Alex Zaharia for website and YouTube, and of course, Beth Cusack for our book dedication. I'd like to welcome all of our members who have joined us today, again, especially those that we have not seen in a while. It's good to see your face. Any guests that may be joining, welcome as well. And if you are a guest, I'd like to pause here so you can introduce yourself.
Mike, it's Tom Kugler.
Tom, welcome.
It's good to be here.
And as always, a special welcome to our speaker, State Representative Brian Lampton. Thank you so much for making time to update us on the state of the state, Brian. Appreciate it. So far, the club's been averaging 37 on Zoom, if anybody's keeping track, and 12 on YouTube. And so with that, I will turn it over to the Reverend Dave Fleming.
All right, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. News, Israelis and Palestinians are at it again, lobbing missiles at each other. And meanwhile, the Republicans in Congress are still fighting over Trump's big lie. And as we already discussed, Governor DeWine has announced a $1 million lottery incentive for vaccinated Ohioans. Fellow Republican Congressman Jim Jordan criticized the move, but DeWine replied, "A life lost to COVID when the vaccine is now readily available is the real waste." Most of Ohio's COVID health orders will expire on June 2nd, but please still get your vaccine for the rest of us. Prince Harry says growing up as a royal was like living in a zoo. Well, yeah, I guess so, but it was a really nice one with castles and limousines and stuff like that. I wish I could. And a new glass elevator will take people 1,210 feet high above New York City. That's only important news if you really want to be 1,200 feet above New York City looking down at it. Ohio State University reveals that a massage therapist had sex with 5 Ohio State football players. Possibly it did not improve their gridiron performance, but a massage is always something nice to have. Miami Heat's Udonis Haslem was ejected from the first game of the season after 3 minutes and 2 technical fouls. The South Carolina golfer, I don't know this guy, David Sinowitz, landed his ball on the back of a large alligator, sunning itself next to a water hazard. The rule is that golfers play each ball as it lies, but Sinowitz claimed or cited an abnormal course condition exception and continued his round without a penalty stroke. Wyoming residents are given permission for the first time, to collect and eat deer, antelope, moose, and elk that has been killed by cars. In Ohio, we call it roadkill, of course. Chief Game Warden Rick King is worried that some people will deliberately drive into wildlife to take illegal game. I don't think that's going to. Harvard Medical School researchers found that despite how much doctors hate cyberchondria, patients are slightly better at diagnosing what ails them after consulting Google. And it was a bad week for nappers who are dreading a return to working in an office because it may mean surrendering their afternoon naps, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. One survey of 2,000 employees found that 33% of them take naps while working from home. And it was a bad week for sacrificing for the cause after former President Trump called on his supporters to boycott Coca-Cola, whose CEO has criticized the new Republican voter laws in Georgia. But Trump was photographed the next day at Mar-a-Lago with a bottle of Diet Coke hidden on his desk behind his telephone. No one, absolutely no one in La Russell, Montana, which has a population of 70, showed up to vote in last week's local elections. City Clerk Deborah Burton says, I guess we didn't throw up the flag and let everybody know there was an election. And New Hampshire wants to become the flying car capital of the United States. Last year, the state became the first in the country to make flying cars road legal under a 2020 bill, 2020 law nicknamed the Jetsons Bill. Roadable aircraft require no inspection as long as they're compliant with FAA rules and owners pay a $2,000 registration fee. Let's see what else. Okay, here's some quotes. Trying to avoid any political quotes today, but anyway, a few of them do come out of the world of politics. George Bernard Shaw said to Winston Churchill, I'm enclosing 2 tickets to the first night of my new play. Bring a friend if you have one. Churchill responded, cannot possibly attend the first night. I will attend the second if there is one, if the play is performed a second time. A member of the British Parliament to then Prime Minister Disraeli in the early 1800s. Sir, you will either die on the gallows or of some unspeakable disease. That depends, said Disraeli, whether I embrace your policies or your mistress. Clarence Darrow, famous trial lawyer, I have never killed a man, but I've read many obituaries with great pleasure. Mark Twain, I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved of it. Let's just learn about his illness. Let's hope it's nothing trivial, said Irvin Cobb. Paul Keating, notable quote, he is simply a shiver looking for a spine to run up. Charles, Count Talleyrand, in order to avoid being called a flirt, she always yielded easily. Mae West, his mother should have thrown him away and kept the stork. And Mark Twain, wonderful humorist Mark Twain. Why do you sit there looking like an envelope without any address on it? Okay, so he called the sheriff's office and the sheriff's deputy answered, yes, what can I do for you? He said, I'm calling to report about my neighbor, Virgil Smith. He's hiding marijuana inside his firewood. Don't know how he gets it inside them logs, but he's hiding it there. The deputy answered, said, thanks much for the call. And the next day they descended on Virgil's house, searched the shed where the firewood was kept using axes. They busted open every piece of wood, but they found no marijuana. They sneered at Virgil and left. Shortly after, the phone rang at Virgil's house. Hey, Virgil, this here's Floyd. Did the sheriff come? Yeah. Did they chop your firewood for the dinner? Yep. Happy birthday, buddy. Rednecks know how to get her done. Get her done. And finally, the mom test. I was out walking with my 5-year-old daughter. She picked up something off the ground and started to put it in her mouth. I took the thing away from her and asked her not to do it. What? Why? She asked. Because it's been on the ground and you don't know where it's been. It's dirty and it probably has germs. At this point, my daughter looked at me with absolute admiration and asked, Mom, how do you know all this stuff? You are so smart. I thought quickly and replied, all moms know this stuff. It's on the mom test. You have to know it or they won't let you be a mom. We walked along in silence for 2 or 3 more minutes, but she was evidently pondering this new information. Oh, I get it, she beamed. So if you don't pass the test, you have to be the dad. Exactly, she said. And so also we will look at birthdays. Today is Don Adams. I think maybe like his 78th or 79th birthday. Congratulations, Don. And this coming week, Bruce Brumfeld, Steve Gilbert, and Jeff Fiorito will all celebrate birthdays. On the 12th, 3 charter members celebrated 48 years, suggesting that this club was apparently founded 48 years ago. And those gentlemen are Mike Lafino, Tom Mulat, and Arthur Hadley. Arthur Hadley, sometimes known by a different name. So that pretty much completes the report with the exception of the fines. And of course, you are on your honor to pay these fines directly to the club treasurer. That's $1 if you are or have ever served in the Ohio State Legislature. I just put that in.
Oh, you're killing me.
$1. I mean, the graph go more than pays that. I put that in there for Rick and Brian. I don't know, somebody else.
And Doyle.
Bob, I don't know. Kugler, were you ever in the state? Anyway, it's $1 if you ever landed a golf ball on an alligator's back and then played it. It's $1 if you have ever eaten moose stew. And it's $1 if you Googled for a medical diagnosis. And with that, I will ask the president to search or canvass the club for Happy Bucks.
Thanks, Dave, as always. Before we move on to Happy Bucks, State Representative Lampton has a double whammy today. He's doing show and tell, and he's also doing our program. So Representative Lampton, I'll let you handle this how you want. We can either do show and tell now, or you can combine it with your program.
Well, let's go ahead and it'll be more tell than show since I don't know how to work the computer.
Sounds good.
So we'll go real quick. Born and raised in Kettering. Those of you that know where the original Casano's Pizza King was first located, I grew up in that neighborhood. That's near the old Neil's Heritage House. Graduated from Fairmont West.
So hold on a minute, Brian.
Yeah.
So does this mean I'm not going to introduce you? Because I worked hard with your aide, Michael Graham, to introduce you. So just clarify that for me, please.
No, I'll do show and then Rick, yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to the introduction.
After show and tell. Roger. Okay, got it.
Graduated from University of Dayton with a degree in communications. I actually wanted to be a DJ, disc jockey, because I have a face for radio.
Huge.
I worked at Ford Credit for a year, basically collecting delinquent car loans, auditing dealerships, and once in a while I actually got to go out in the field and repossess cars. That was exciting. And I started as a nationwide insurance agent back in 1990 and left Nationwide and went independent in 97. And that's it. I've done insurance for 30 plus years. So some of the hobbies, mostly the hobbies that I've mostly taken doing is music. Had piano lessons as a young lad, and then I played clarinet through elementary school. And the reason I played clarinet was because we had to walk to school, and I thought that was a small, light instrument to have to carry around. I didn't like playing clarinet particularly. So in 9th grade, I switched to drums, and I've never looked back. I played concert bands, jazz bands, and marching bands all through high school and at UD. Started playing in garage bands in my early 30s, if I remember that correctly. And actually started singing in those bands by mistake. I probably shouldn't be, but I do. And I currently have a classic rock band. We play 50s, 60s, and early 70s classic rock. I enjoy deer hunting when I can get to it. I've taught insurance and leadership classes throughout my career. I've pretty much always had at least 2 jobs. And as a lot of you know, I announce football and basketball for Beaver Creek. My shirt that I have on, this pearl, is the brand of drum that I play. One of the drum sets that I have. And then obviously you noticed my Rotary pin. Thought I'd point that out in case you couldn't see it. My son's graduated from Bowling Green. He's a CPA and works at Gorilla Glue. And my daughter graduated from The Ohio State University and works at a vet office in Centerville. And another little brief thing, Karen and I met back when we worked at Wendy's when we were in high school. And we went to a homecoming dance. I think she lost a bet, but anyway, she went to a homecoming dance with me and a couple of other dates. And then we reconnected after my divorce. And we live in Beaver Creek with our 2 German Shepherds. So that's my show and tell.
Thank you, Brian. Sound like a little bit like an induction. So somebody grab a pen and put it on your other collar. Thanks for doing that. Next week, we do have Brandon Huff. You're on tap for next week for show and tell. And with that, I'll turn it over to Happy Bucks.
I'm going to jump in because I have a plethora of Happy Bucks. The first one is I got my 4th COVID shot on Tuesday, which means in 14 days I will definitely be vaccinated. The second is on Wednesday night I got to go to a Dayton Dragons game for the first time in almost 2 years. I think it was like 19 months. Thursday night we had a wonderful meeting with of a committee to have orientation for new members, and it's going really, really well. We've got a great committee, and we're getting someplace we want to be. I had a 4th Happy Buck, and I'm at the lake house for the weekend, and it's going to be nice. So those are my 4, and I want to tell everybody else here that's been fined or Happy Bucked that you can mail your money to Beaver Creek Rotary Club, P.O. Box 340475, Beaver Creek, Ohio 45434-0475, and I'll duly put it into our credit union bank account.
Karen has a Happy Buck.
I get to open my pool this weekend.
We're working on opening the pool. I don't know if it's going to be open this weekend, but it's getting done. All right.
All right. Any other Happy Bucks?
Yeah, I got 2.
There you go, Brandon.
One for Eric just not having enough Happy Bucks. I just want to throw in an extra $1 to make sure the club's budget is balanced there. And 2, to you, Mike, for those who went last week to our Founders Day, it was nice. I really enjoyed seeing a lot of y'all, and I know the work that went into that during the pandemic was a lot. So thank you for putting that on. I appreciated it.
Thank you, Brendan.
Mike, wanted to
Wow. Thanks, Randy.
And Mike, could I just say something real quick? Just wanted to let everyone know that my 3-year term as assistant governor is up on June 30th. So I appreciate the 2 years I've been able to work with you. Unfortunately, most of it was over a Zoom screen, but hopefully I can keep in touch and stop and see you guys periodically. But your new assistant governor come July 1 will be Mike Moorhead out of the Oakwood Club. He's a good man, and I think he'll serve you well. And in the future, still, if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm still a Rotarian, so I'll still be around. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Megan. Did you get that address where you can mail that $1?
Got it. I'm on it.
Okay, good. Any other Happy Bucks before we move on to announcements?
I was just going to give a Happy Buck, David Malk, and I've missed a couple things the last week or so, but I am having some good stuff with my son who graduated from high school last weekend at Greenon High School, so I missed Founders Day because of that, so my apologies, but had a great time with him at his graduation ceremony. And then last night, I missed the membership meeting, but he won the 2-mile 3,200 event at the Ohio Heritage Conference track meet last night. So very excited for him and all his success. And he's headed off to Defiance College in the fall, where he'll play on the soccer team and also run for the track team. So excited for him.
You can't just say that without telling me the time. It was 3,200.
It was 10:32.
Nice, great time. Congrats.
Yep.
I do have a happy bucket before we leave. My grandson, my youngest grandson is graduating from Thomas More tomorrow, so I'm excited about that.
Congratulations. Pete, you're muted if you're trying to. Oh, still muted. Can't hear you. We'll come back to you, Pete, after the announcements. Maybe we can get you in there. Announcements this week. So next week we'll have a board meeting after our regular meeting. As always, it'll be right after our Zoom meeting. So feel free to hang around if you want to attend the board meeting. We will be presenting our two best options for meeting in person again to the club May 28th. I'll make the announcement again next week as well. I'll send out a P-mail with all the details after our presentation to the club on the 28th. Please try to attend our meeting on the 28th for the presentation so you can be well informed for the vote. The golf outing, July 16th, is going to be held at the Beaver Creek Golf Club as always. Flags for Heroes. Jim, I don't know if you want to make an announcement here, but we will be installing the flags at Be Hope Church on May 25th for Memorial Day. We plan on showing up at Be Hope Church at 4 o'clock for the installation of the flags. I'll send out a reminder. And then we will be picking them up on June the 1st at 4 p.m. So if you can come out and help with the flags, that would be great. Are there any other announcements?
Is this working yet?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, I had to log off and log back in. I don't know why it didn't work. Thanks for letting me give the happy buck that I had a vacation with a daughter and granddaughter and wife last week in Siesta Key. That was nice and refreshing, but something that I had found out last week while on vacation, which is I'll give an honor buck. My father, biological father, passed away yesterday of COVID-19. He had been out on respirator for 3 weeks and just didn't quite make it. So I give him honor. I appreciate the prayers and thoughts. We'll be traveling back down. I will be to Florida next week to get things in order. So appreciate that, prayers and thoughts, and everybody that had posted stuff to the Facebook page. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, certainly. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Rick, who's very excited apparently to introduce our state representative, Mr. Brian Lampton. Rick, go ahead. Rick, you're muted.
Don't we wish we could do that once in a while?
Oh, really? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, loud and clear, right? Whoever said that, I'm after you. So, hey guys, if you ever want the easiest introduction, have that person have his time to introduce themselves. Because Brian told you everything I was going to tell you. So now I can go from the play-by-play to the color. And just tell you that Brian's doing an amazing job. He, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, when you go into a place like that, and where I'm at now at the county, Tom's there, you rent that seat. You don't own it. You do what you can to make a difference while you sit in that seat, but it's not yours. And I put 8 hard years into the state rep position. I had so many good bills. Some got through, some didn't. And you just want someone to follow you who could make a difference, who thinks like you, who just wants to improve the world and the state for our citizens. And I got to tell you, Brian's doing a great job. He stepped right on it. And part of that, I will give credit to his aide, Michael Graham, because an aide is so very important when you get there. But Brian is picked up some of my bills. He's picked up other great bills. He's connecting with he's doing all the right things he needs to do. And since he's already told you about Karen, his life, his announcing football games and all that, I don't need to go through that. I would just tell you that my former seat is in very good hands, or maybe very good buns with Brian. He's working hard. He's doing us well. And Brian, I'm proud of you, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Rick. I will tell you, it's a true honor and privilege to serve you folks in Columbus. And I will say this, things move very fast and very slow at the same time. Just kind of give you some quick ideas about how it starts, how a bill would start, and then why it takes so long. So first thing you have is an idea, and it usually comes from your constituents. So you basically create the idea, say, here's what I want this bill to do, and you send it to the Legislative Service Commission, which is basically a room full of attorneys and staff people, and they draw it up. That can take several weeks. Then you start interviewing interested parties, and they start looking at the draft. And after some changes are made, you finally decide on this is how I want it to read. You introduce it, and then it gets a bill number. It gets its first reading in the House. And then it goes to the Rules and Reference Committee to be assigned to a committee. Basically, that's the speaker and the leadership team. They assign it to a committee, and then you hope the chair of that committee puts it on the agenda for your introduction. You introduce the bill. The committee could have several meetings about it, several readings. Testimonies are given, whether it's in person or in writing, proponent, opponent testimonies. But they have to have 3 readings before it can be voted on. If the chairman decides it's going to get voted on, and it does pass out of that committee, then it could either go to the floor, or if there is an appropriation, then it goes to a finance committee. If it does go to the floor, it can be you give floor testimony, and then the House votes it. If the House approves it, then it goes to the Senate, and it starts all over again, gets assigned to a committee, et cetera, et cetera. Then if the Senate does not amend it, it goes to the governor. If the Senate does amend it, it comes back to the House, and you vote on it again. Once it's passed both chambers and it goes to the governor, he can either veto it, he can approve it, or he can line item veto it. And then if the governor does sign it, it takes 90 days after that signature for it to become law. So, Rick can tell you, sometimes it can take many months, sometimes it can take a year or so. If it doesn't pass during the 2-year window of this legislative aid, then you have to start all over again. Briefly, I am the Vice Chair of Insurance Committee. I'm also a member of the Armed Services Committee, the Civil Justice Committee, and Financial Institutions. As Rick had mentioned, I have reintroduced a couple of bills that he worked on the last GA. One of them has already passed through the House. That's the Auditor's Emergency Assessment Act, which basically gives the auditors the ability to reassess a home that's been damaged. For example, this one actually came from the Dayton Memorial Day tornadoes, but it could be even if it's just a house fire. It gives the auditor the ability to reassess and reduce that person's taxes while that house is until that house is rebuilt. We also reintroduced one that Rick worked on very hard last time, called Jacob's Law. And that is basically a statewide registry of convicted violent child offenders, so that if there's a new person in the family dynamic, they can check this registry. It's named after a Fairborn's 18-month-old kid who was killed. So we're hoping to get this one across the finish line this time. I also very recently introduced with Rep. Abrams a distracted driving bill. It's getting a lot of attention. We think it's time. We are going to have opponents on this one. It's going to be a tough one, but I think it's time to. We all see it. We see people driving down the roads holding their phones instead of looking at the road. We had a report from a law enforcement officer that pulled a lady over, walked up to her window, knocked on her window, and watched her pause the Netflix movie she was watching to see what he wanted. So I think it's time to have folks stop watching movies while they're driving, and perhaps they ought to pay attention to the road. Some other things going on, as you all were talking about prior to the meeting starting, Governor DeWine announced the opening of Ohio. So now I think we can focus on non-COVID things. One of the big things we're working on is employers are having a lot of difficulty finding workers. So we need to disincentivize folks for staying at home, and that's coming. We also need to focus on in getting more skilled workers. We're running a huge shortage of electricians, plumbers, HVAC, welders, and others, mechanics. And those of you that are trying to hire these folks, you're finding this out. Also, there's a shortage of nursing. So we're working on legislation to help with filling that our workforce up with those folks. I'm also a member of the Business First Caucus, whose objective is to make Ohio the state for expanding and growing and attracting business to Ohio. With this upcoming census that they'll eventually give us these numbers, we're probably going to lose another congressional seat. We've been losing seats over the last several years, and our goal is to turn that around and gain those seats back. The more jobs we have in Ohio, the more people will be living here and moving here. Of course, we're going to do everything we can to protect Right Pat. One of the bills I introduced with Rep. White, who's our neighbor in Montgomery County, has to do with getting military families the ability to register their kids in school early. So the current law, the way it works is you have to move, and then you have to establish residency, then you have to go to the school in person to register your kids for school. Well, what happens most of the times is the military families will receive their orders early or late spring, but they move in the fall. So by the time they actually move and get there, it's too late for them to register. So this bill will allow them to register early, and they'll be able to register virtually. So that'll give them the ability to move and know what schools they'll be able to go to. And hopefully, in a lot of cases, they have to make up classes in summer school. This will hopefully prevent that. It also includes a component where if the child has to move during school, that they can enroll virtually in the school they're either going to or the school they're currently in, so they can finish classes, so that again that they don't have to make up for that. So this is actually a Department of Defense directive, and again we're doing everything we can, just like Rick did when he was there, to protect our military families and again keep Ohio as a leader for military families, veterans, and so forth. One last comment, and then talking with Rick and some former reps, we're in this current legislative environment we're in is really pretty good, because we've got a Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate who actually are both from Lima, so they've met, and they work very well together. Our goals and objectives are very, very similar, so we don't have a conflicting agendas. And we think we'll be able to accomplish a lot of great things in the next couple of years. I don't want to take up a whole bunch more time. I would like to answer questions as best I can if anybody has anything.
Brian, does the legislature and/or your caucus have a plan to fix the terrible gerrymandering of the congressional seats? So back in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, 2098, 2099, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010
not sure what year it was, 2017, maybe 2018, an entirely new system was voted and approved on how the congressional and state districts lines will be drawn. So this will be, since this is the first census since that system was put in place, this will be the first time, and it's much more, or I maybe should say much less partisan. So both Republican and Democrats have a seat at the table in drawing these lines. The big problem right now is that the census folks won't be able to get that data to Ohio in time for that to happen by this. We actually have a constitutional deadline. Ohio's one of the few states, maybe the only state, that actually has a constitutional deadline for the redistricting. And it's September 15th, I believe. And we've been told by the census folks that we won't have that data until mid to late August. It's too late. It'll literally be too late for us or whoever's doing it. I'm not doing it. To compile that data, because it takes about 2 weeks to put it into the software, and then to have whoever this new system of folks to actually redraw those lines. And so I don't know how that's gonna shake out. You know, it just short of suing the census people to get that data to us, it doesn't look like it's going to get here on enough time for them to put that together. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously their lines will have to get redrawn, but those congressional races are coming up. So it's a big problem. Any other, did I get your question, Dave?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Well, good answers.
Yes, Brian, I've got a question. As a constituent, how do we get on your calendar to meet with you?
Oh, yeah. I will, when I get done, I'll post you my office email and just contact my aide, and we'll set that up. So we go in here. What is my Ryan Lampton? Oh, I can't spell my name. I am MP at Ohio House.gov. There you go. So email that, and Michael, the best aide in the house, will.
Hey, can I interrupt there, Brian?
Yes, sure.
Yes. Let me tell you, this dude, Brian, our Michael is the best. And I convinced Brian to take him on as his aide, which was Brian's best move yet. And oh, by the way, he's the son of David Graham, our auditor. And this kid is amazing. So yeah, Brian, you got that right.
Brian, I have a quick question. Do I have permission to put that email address in your DACDB record?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that if I remember.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, thank you. Then I don't have to worry about remembering.
Hey, Brian, this is Ed.
Hey, Ed.
You talked about technical jobs. Is there any consideration given to some kind of apprentice program that would be possibly augmented with state funds so that people could be apprenticed and it wouldn't be too much of a financial burden on the actual people that are teaching them?
I know there's been some discussion about that, and the other component is, you know, looking at veterans that come out of the military. If you think about a lot of veterans with aircraft repair training, welding training, especially welding, plumbing and electricity training, and they get out into the civic and they have to start all over again. So we need to get them on the fast track, and I know there's some talk about putting them so that they can get on the fast track to get that apprenticeship done. And yes, there are discussions, Ed, about specifically funding those apprenticeship programs and to get folks into those careers. So yeah, that I don't know who's introducing it, but I have heard folks talking about putting that into play.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Brian, a number of people that are not in the workforce at the present time aren't there because there's still not adequate childcare support so that they can go back to work. And so they're stuck at home watching their children instead of going back and resuming their careers. With the dropping of the extra $300 of unemployment, this could very negatively affect those families. What kinds of steps is the state going to take to increase the amount of available daycare for children and subsidize some of the cost? Because as you well know, the cost of daycare for a child runs somewhere around $200 a week. So that when someone's making $400 a week, paying $200 of it for daycare is an awful lot of money.
Yeah, a good question, Eric. No, I don't know. I think I mean, the first things first, Ohio's opened up, so those daycare centers should be fully open so they can have, obviously full capacity where before they haven't. But no, I'm not aware at this time of any subsidies for folks that, to help them with their childcare costs. And you're right. I remember putting my kids through it. I don't know how I made it, but we did. It is very, very expensive. Sort of a non-answer answer.
It's more of an awareness question.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else?
Well, I got a self-serving question, but it's very related to your background. As I mentioned before, I totaled my truck like 5 weeks ago, and my insurance has been awesome. USAA is taking care of me, paid out already. Awesome. But it's been 5.5 weeks. I can't even reach the third party insurer for things like, loss of value, loss of profit, pain and suffering, just straight up can't even reach them. And then I call them, they're like, yeah, we don't know where this claim is. And then every time I try to Google things, I even found something from the state of Ohio and all the rules. All I could see in there was wow, there's no consumer protections. This insurance company can just screw me over for as long as they want. And there's nothing to really help me unless I was to go find a lawyer and say, hey, track them down and take care of this on my behalf. I know Dave just perked up a little there thinking perhaps some business, even if that's outside of his wheelhouse. But
you don't have a contract with that insurance company. That's why. The person who damaged your truck has a contract. They're the ones who have the obligation by contract for that insurance company to respond to them.
Yeah, that's just what's frustrating is I just don't, I'm like, are they ever going to pay me or are they just going to ignore me for forever? I just don't know what to do. And it doesn't feel like there's anything to help me.
Brandon, let me ask you, we can talk offline to get some very specifics. I could at least kind of steer you in some directions there. But the Department of Insurance in our new director, Judy French, they do have, avenues for folks with complaints for that sort of thing. I wouldn't count on that huge, but it's, that other carrier is responsible provided there was an active policy at the time of loss, and that sort of thing. So, let's talk offline and I could get some specific details and at least, direct you towards that carrier's claims department and see if I can at least facilitate some communication there. A lot of times these things are just lack of communication and stuff like that. So, but let me get that information. We'll talk offline. All right. And then see if I can help you on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for all you're doing on a larger scale. I appreciate that as well.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Brian. I don't know if you're aware of that. We do like to dedicate a book to the library on our speaker's behalf.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's your time to shine. So I'll turn it over to Beth to dedicate that book.
Thank you, Representative Lampton, for joining us today and presenting to the club. in your honor, we will be presenting a book called Popular MMOs Enters the Mind to the Beaver Creek Community Library. And it's about a hidden world deep beneath our own where there is a villain with a sinister plot. So there is no tie to you whatsoever, but this is a very popular kids book. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Next week, we'll have Dan Kilpatrick from the Peace Corps, and he will be introduced by Alex Zahariev. As a reminder, please keep an eye on upcoming programs at beavercreekrotary.com and Facebook. Is there anything else for the good of the club?
Yes, you need to announce that there's going to be a foundation board meeting immediately following this.
I think the president of the foundation needs to make that announcement.
And I want to thank everybody, especially Rep Perales for the introduction and his help in my transition. He's right. The best decision I made was acquiring Mr. Graham as my aide. But if you guys have any questions or anything policy related or whatever, you got my email. Contact him, and we'll do what we can. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Does anyone know why Beaver Creek Channel 5 is off the air?
Yes, I can address that. It's just technical difficulties. A piece of equipment that is owned by, not really owned by us, but owned by or given to us and maintenance by the cable company is just stopped working. So we've got information into them to try to get us back on the air. Till then, all the programming is on our YouTube channel, so you can view at least the city meetings. Oh.
My condolences, Pete.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. If you want to hang on for the foundation board meeting, please stay right there. Otherwise, we will see you next week.
Hey, Jim Gundel, I'm replying to your email right now with that information you requested.